Welcome back to the Sad to Savage podcast. I'm your host, Shelby Sacco Spinnick, and today we're talking about one of the biggest reasons why people stay stuck in the exact same place year after year, and it's because they're living in a cycle of being sporadic instead of a cycle of being steady. I told you guys in season 4 we're doing a little series, and this is episode 2. Just a reminder that I am doing video for my podcast now. If you want to watch the video while listening, it is on YouTube and linked in the description of this episode. If you're watching, you see me out with my little computer and all of my notes. Whenever I start a podcast episode, I'm always out of breath, and I have zero idea why. Anyway, you know this cycle of sporadic that I'm talking about. It's when you get super motivated, you make a plan, you decide you're going to change your entire life all at once. You get this like burst of energy, and you're like, yup, today's the day that I'm going to do it. And then within a day or a week, you are completely exhausted, you are burnt out, you're overwhelmed, you're confused, and you fall off track and you're like, you know what, I actually can't do this. I actually don't want to do this. And the reason being is because no one could do that. You blame yourself, you kind of spiral, and you decide that you're not the type of person that could do that. When in reality, you can do it. You can change your life. You can become the person that you clearly saw yourself being. It's that you just need to follow the correct strategy to help you be successful. And that's what we're going to learn today. I'm really excited. The truth is that we think we have to go 0 to 100 to change our lives. We have to go all or nothing, all in. It's like one of those movies when there's a scene where it's like someone becoming like popular and they change everything about themselves, right? We think we need this like overnight transformation when in reality, change comes from small, consistent changes and actions that we show up and do daily that allow our brain to actually change, our identity to actually shift. Our behaviors are normal. We need to give ourselves time to grow, and that sporadic all or nothing, one big thing, the little things are going to outweigh it every single time. The goal is to learn tiny, steady habits that your brain can learn, repeat, and then turn into your new identity. In this episode, I'm going to teach you how to break that toxic little cycle of being sporadic and how to step into a version of you who is consistent, grounded, and steady without burning out and without the pressure of perfection and without the unrealistic pressure of changing everything all at once. My Sad to Savage journey is such a testament to this because it was a small change that started it all that I was able to continue to build off of and continue to improve at over the course of honestly a lot of time. I remember I started my Sad to Savage journey in July, and in December of that year is when things started to really, really click. I had learned a few things, stacked a few things, and I remember hitting this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, things are like actually changing. Things are actually happening. It felt like nothing was changing. These small little things I was doing, it felt like nothing until it didn't. And then I remember I hit another kind of like peak in April. So I started in July, hit that first peak in December where I started to actually feel changes. And again in April, I remember I woke up one day and I was like, I think I love myself. I think I love my life. I think all of these little things I've been doing every single day over the last few months finally accumulated to something that was a lifestyle change, an identity change, behavioral changes that reshaped me into a new person. I could have never become this new person if I was relying on quick little spurts of energy randomly to change my life. Now, without further ado, let's dive into how to go from sporadic to steady. Looking back on my life, there's a few like main sporadic little things that I did that are really, really funny to me. For example, growing up, I was never someone who was clean. Like hygienic wise, I was clean, but I'm one of 6 kids. My room was in the basement from 9 until my mid 20s when I moved out. And I was so messy. Like I'd never had a clean room. I never had a made bed. Honestly, I was going to say messes don't bother me. They didn't used to bother me. Now they bother me a whole ton. And I would get these random nights where me and my sister both did this. We would stay up till like 4 a.m., completely redoing our room and completely changing, saying we're going through a class and saying this is our new style, getting rid of everything. We just had these like big moments. And I think it's because honestly, I look back at my childhood, my mom had the same thing where she would just randomly decide, oh, we're completely redoing this room. You're switching rooms with your sisters. You're doing this, and this. But me and my sister would stay up all night, completely redo our room. And in an attempt to kind of like identity shift. For me, that was more when I was younger. Now I honestly still do that now that I'm thinking about it. Now, as an adult, places that I used to see this were when I'd be like, you know what, I need to go through my entire closet and redo everything, get rid of everything. And I would start the project because I thought, you know what, this is going to make me a better person. It's going to make me feel better mentally. I'll be more organized from now on, this and this and that. And then I would get halfway through the project and have so many regrets. Like, why would I ever decide to do this? When in reality, if I had chosen a small habit that wasn't overwhelming, that wasn't unrealistic, that wasn't going to make me kind of derail from the process, I could have been successful at it. Now, what I do today to help with that specific problem before we dive into the episode is I do small little habits that help me keep a clean space, or small little habits where if I'm going through my closet, it's one section. It's not all eight, it's one small section. And then the next night I'll do another and another and another. I've learned how to be successful by being steady. Before we dive in, I kind of want to talk about why people struggle to change their lives, the actual science and psychology behind it. I was researching this and I thought it was really, really interesting. With this series that we're doing on this podcast for season 4, it's so many things that I wanted to dive deeper in and learn more about that then I get to share with you guys. So this has been really, really fun for me because I wanted to learn more about this topic. So what I learned when it comes to why people struggle, I learned that there are 4 massive biological and psychological barriers when it comes to people changing their lives. The first one is that your brain prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar change. I've heard this so many times, and I actually have seen it in my own life. My brain is addicted to chaos. I remember reading a book called The Power of One More by Ed Milet, and it was the first time that I could ever put like an explanation to what I'd always felt. And because and that's when I learned I'm addicted to chaos. I was raised in a really, really chaotic environment. I was one of 6 kids. Like there's always craziness, always things going on. There was never like rest or sitting down or like relaxing. It was always like go, 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 go. And I see that in my own life now, my comfortable level, like where I feel most safe, where I feel most comfortable, it is in chaos. I create chaos for myself. That's why I have 2 businesses, why I had 3 weddings, why I have a podcast while I'm writing a book, working to develop an app. I crave chaos. Now, I'm not saying that. I honestly think it is partially a superpower and partially like it's like the yin and yang. There's a good side to it and a bad side to it. But all that to say that the brain prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar change. That's where I see it in my life. The science behind this is that your brain's number one job is to keep you safe. That's because safety means predictability. So if someone has lived in like the sadness, low confidence, with bad habits, with anxiety, with chaos, that is the brain's normal state, just like my chaos is my normal state. So say someone wants to change and they want to wake up earlier, they want to start new routines, set boundaries, eat differently, think differently, that actually can trigger the brain to send a danger signal. It can say, hey, this is new, this is new, this is unsafe, I don't feel good, stop this. And this is actually backed by neuroscience because your brain relies on this thing called predictive processing, which basically means that your brain's predicting your future based on your past. And it prefers the familiar suffering over unfamiliar growth. It's almost like what you're most comfortable with is what you know. So getting outside of that comfort zone, even if it's not horrible, even if it could be like beautiful and great and amazing, it's that unknown, that scariness that your brain's trying to protect you from. Homeostasis actually keeps you stuck in the emotional environment that your brain is used to. Number 2 is sadness and stress actually shuts down your motivation centers. So when you're feeling sad, overwhelmed, burnt out, the dopamine system can then become dysregulated. And dopamine is the brain chemical that's responsible for things like motivation, desire, energy, goal-driven behavior. And sadness often leads to low dopamine, low energy, less drive, less reward from positive behaviors. And while this is happening at the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic, planning, decision making, it becomes less active, which means you might know what you should do, but you can't necessarily make yourself do it. And while this could be seen as being lazy, it's literally just your brain under emotional stress. Number 3, sadness creates a cognitive overload, which basically means when you're sad, everything else kind of like piles on and it feels heavier and your brain becomes like full of, it's like there's so much taking up space, like overthinking. Maybe it's fear of judgment, fear of failure, rumination, stress, survival mode thoughts. And then there's no additional mental bandwidth left for new habits, routines, discipline, motivation, decision making, self belief. And that's called cognitive overload, which is literally when the brain is overloaded and it shuts down the non essential tasks, meaning that change feels impossible because the brain is literally too full to process it. The fourth thing is that identity controls your behavior, and a lot of people struggle with changing their identity. Now, I think about this all the time. I don't think that people necessarily are unable to change. I think that people don't believe that they can change, and they don't see themselves as this new version of themselves that they want to become. They don't believe it. So then what happens is your brain subconsciously creates behaviors that match the identity that you think you have of yourself. So if you think that you're someone that fails, if you think that you're someone who is always the victim, if you think that you're someone that nothing good ever happens to, or someone who doesn't go to the gym and work out, doesn't eat healthy, you're not going to all of a sudden develop behaviors that prove your brain wrong. Your behaviors will prove your brain right. So identity, it is so powerful how you think about yourself. And I think that people, when they're trying to change, don't realize that changing your identity is crucial. Now, let's summarize those reasons, those science-backed reasons of why change is pretty hard. It said the brain resists anything unfamiliar. Sadness reduces dopamine and motivation. Stress and feeling overwhelmed can shut down the decision-making center of the brain. Cognitive overload steals the energy needed for new things and new habits. And your identity, how you see yourself, can impact your behavior. Now, knowing all of that, when it comes back to those sporadic little moments of, oh my gosh, I can do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, all of that information we just learned explains why sporadic isn't the answer. These big changes, these crazy things, because our brain could get scared. We're overwhelmed. We don't even have the motivation to keep it going, this or that. We're not that person. We're not all of a sudden that person just because we could decide to do this one time. Like our identity hasn't shifted yet. How we can actually accomplish to change is by having a strategy to become steady, to make small choices, tiny habits, small wins, micro identity shifts, small routines, dopamine positive behaviors, small little regulation tools, predictability, structure, self-belief. If we do those things and develop a strategy to become steady at these changes, that is how we will be able to change our lives. And that's also why learning small little habits that you can show up and do consistently day after day that are realistic, things that you can keep consistent, things that are sustainable, that is how you change your life. If you take one small baby step forward every single day for 300 days, you will go so far, opposed to if you did one quick sprint one time every month. Why small, steady changes work also is because when it is small, the brain can then tolerate the change. It won't feel overwhelmed, it doesn't require motivation, and it helps you slowly chip away at your old identity in order to build a new one. Now I want to go into a little bit more on the science of why small daily changes create real change. And number one is the brain forms habits through repetition, not through intensity. So Hebb's law, I don't know if I'm saying that right, is that your brain strengthens neural pathways through frequency, not through force. So doing something small and consistent will literally rewire your brain faster than doing something big once that does absolutely nothing for actual habit formation. Small habits create stronger neural connections because they are repeated more often. Also, research shows that repetition is the number one factor in long-term behavioral change. Small repeated actions become automatic because the basal ganglia, which is the habit center, stores repeated behaviors. Number two, big changes trigger the brain's threat response, which we kind of talked about in that last little section. When you try to overhaul your entire life by all of a sudden waking up super early, all of a sudden cutting out all these different foods, changing your routine overnight, starting 15 habits at once, your brain will start panicking because the amygdala interprets drastic change as a threat, which then can trigger anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, shutting down, self-sabotage, avoidance. Because your brain's job is homeostasis, which we talked about earlier, just basically keeping things stable, huge changes break that stability so that your brain basically resists change. Small changes are able to bypass that threat response and are accepted more easily. So you will literally help yourself be successful by starting small. Another way to look at that is big changes cause panic and small changes feel safe. Number three is willpower is weak and systems are strong. I love talking about willpower because when I learned about willpower, I was like, wait, what? I was like, actually, wait, what? You basically only have so much willpower every single day. So if you use it all up, it's gone. But if you teach yourself small habits, Habits don't require your willpower because habits are automatic behaviors. You don't have to think about it, to choose it, to use your willpower to do it. You're doing it automatically. So then by creating habits, you're saving your willpower. People think that they need motivation or discipline in order to change their life when science actually shows the opposite. Research on ego depletion basically proves that willpower drains quickly, big changes require too much willpower, and you can't effort your way into transformation, but small changes require almost no willpower and go under the radar of resistance. So, science actually reduced the need for self control. Small tasks are more likely to become automatic, and big tasks burn too much cognitive energy. So, the translation there is basically that small habits are going to be sustainable while big habits kind of cause, or big overhauls, big changes cause a burnout. The fourth thing that we're going to talk about is that identity changes through small evidence, not big moments. So the psychology is basically that you become what you repeatedly do. Your identity doesn't just shift because of one big thing that you do someday. Your identity changes because of consistent micro evidence. So for example, say you drink water one morning, you don't automatically feel like this crazy healthy person. Your life's completely changed. But if you drink water every single morning for 10 days, your brain would then tell yourself, oh, you know what? I'm someone that wakes up and takes care of myself. You have showed yourself through a small action that you repeated that you are now this person. Also, there is a theory called self-perception theory that shows that we infer our identity from our repeated behaviors. And also, identity-based habits show that small wins drive identity change. That is from James Clear and BJ Fogg research. Number 5, the fifth thing we're going to talk about is that motivation loops need quick wins, not big wins. Our brains are almost kind of trained to want dopamine, quick hits of dopamine. And dopamine is your motivation neurotransmitter. So it's released when you experience things like progress, accomplishments, small achievements. And tiny wins will then trigger that dopamine release and give you the motivation to keep going. For example, when I make my bed every single day, that is a small win and I get dopamine from it. I'm happy. I'm proud of myself. When I go to the gym, I'll literally like post a video of me working on my Instagram story. And that is a small reward. I'm like, I am this person who works out and I am telling people I am. Like, I'm proud of who I am and who I'm showing up as. And it sounds stupid, but that is literally a dopamine hit for me. I love it. These small little things that I'm doing are rewards that are triggering dopamine. So small habits actually give you those little wins. Whereas big goals, like I want to lose 30 pounds, I want to change my entire life. Those are things that we can work towards, but those don't have an immediate reward, right? The dopamine stays lower, motivation, a lot more is required of us in those big goals. Whereas if we start with those small habits and those small choices that we can engrave, learn, and grow from, we are setting ourselves up for success. I also think that it's important to note that big goals without milestones reduce motivation. So setting a big goal and then during the process of working towards it, celebrating those little wins, those little milestones is super, super important. Now, the sixth thing we're going to talk about is that the tiny habit method works better than big changes. Now, this is from behavioral science from BJ Fogg at Stanford University. And his research found that tiny habits like doing one push-up or drinking water is the number one most successful behavioral change strategy, and that big changes fail 90% of the time, whereas small changes succeed because they're easy, fast, and low resistance. Basically, his research found that the smaller the habit, the lower the ability required, which would then make the higher the success rate. So really, if I can go back 10 steps and summarize, if you want to be steady, if you want to be growing on this path, this up chart over the course of the next 3 months, the next 6 months, your life, it is starting small with little changes that you can make, that you can build on, but that you can first become successful at. Now I want to get into the sporadic to steady method that I made up and walk you guys through this. Again, this mini series that I'm doing, this is episode 2 of season 4. I'm going to have worksheets that you guys can download linked in each episode so that you guys can work through what we're actually learning. I'm a visual learner. I know other people are probably visual learners too. So that's kind of why I'm doing that little thing. You can get this worksheet for free, just linked in the episode again. But number 1, phase 1, actually, what we're going to start with is we're going to identify what our sporadic behavior is. What do we do on impulse when we're trying to change, but we don't know how? What is that thing we keep repeating? Because that's what we're desperate for change in that specific area. And we need to come up with structure to support it. Sporadic basically means an intense and inconsistent or short-lived actions. So for example, maybe it is buying all new planners or journals and then not using them, or doing a full pantry overhaul and then not having any structure to help you keep it organized like that. Or maybe you make a massive vision board and a new routine overnight, and 15 things are within that new routine. And you've never had a routine before. Maybe it's spending 3 hours deep cleaning your house and then nothing for weeks. Basically, what I want you to do is write out, what do you randomly, intensely, or emotionally do when you want to change? The goal is to see what that sporadic behavior is and to know that it's not failure, but to know that it is showing you what you desire change in and where we can start. The next thing I want you to do in phase 2 is define the study needed behind the sporadic action. What do you actually want that sporadic behavior to help you do? What is it trying to teach you? Every sporadic action in your brain is trying to create some type of steady identity. We just don't know what that is. I want to ask you guys to write out what steady behavior you think you are secretly hoping that you'd be able to create for yourself. For example, cleaning your whole house randomly. Does that mean that you want a clean and peaceful home? An extreme diet? Does that mean that you want to feel your body and learn how to feel healthy? Buying new planners, does that mean that you want to feel organized? Maybe you start doing this insane 3-hour morning routine after not ever having a morning routine. Is that you're craving a structure, a schedule? So underneath that one-time action, what are you actually craving long term? And then for phase 3, I want you to choose a tiny habit that matches that steady need. So if you're comparing this to episode 1 where it's sad to savage, we're looking at sporadic to steady. We figured out what the sporadic was. We're figuring out what the steady is. And now we're going to look and see what we can do in that middle part, in that journey from sporadic to steady. Where are we starting at? Where are we getting to? And what's one small thing we can start to do to take us on that journey? I want you to choose one small, tiny habit that you can start doing every single day. In the worksheet, I will have a bunch provided, but let's go through a few here. And I want you to write out, or before this episode ends, I want you to decide, what is that one small thing you can start doing? Maybe you're someone that deep cleans their house once every couple of weeks and starts going through everything. Maybe what you really, really want is a tidy home. So the tiny habit that you could start doing is a 2-minute nightly reset, where you just set a timer and for 2 minutes every single night, you just clean up one little space. This is something that I do. I clean my space every night in my nighttime routine so that I can consistently keep my house clean, because I know it's better for my mental health. It's better just all around for work, for everything. And I am someone who used to be so all or nothing with cleaning that I need this habit in my life because it keeps things in order for me. Maybe you're someone who's sporadic with extreme dieting and your steady need is really just better health. Maybe your tiny habit could be drinking 1 glass of water in the morning or adding 1 vegetable or 1 fruit to lunch every day. Maybe you do a massive routine overhaul every couple months where you're going to change your entire life. Your need, your steady there, it's structure. Your tiny habit might be 1 consistent morning habit, like making your bed, opening your blinds, or drinking water. Now, I have a bunch of different examples of habits in the worksheet. Before ending this episode, I want you to figure out, what is your sporadic, what is your small, tiny habit you're going to do to get you to steady. I really loved researching this episode because I feel like I already knew so much of the science behind it. And I knew that to change your life, you had to start small, because that's how I changed my entire life. The person that I am now, the habits, the routine, or the routines, everything that I do right now, it's not all because of one decision that I made, right? Well, it is because of one decision I made, but I didn't do all of this at once. I didn't say, this is who I'm going to become and I'm going to do it. I said, that's who I want to become. Here's where I'm going to start. And I continue to build upon it over and over and over and over again over the course of months and years. Starting small will change your life. And I also want you to know, while listening to this podcast, that you can change your life. You can change your entire life. If you have failed at any point in the past, it is not because you are incapable. It is because you might not have had the correct strategy that would work for you. I hope after listening to this episode, you are one step further in your journey to change your entire life, because now you have more information that supports the little scientific facts that you now know that will help you with creating this future version of yourself. I am someone who trusts science. Like, when I read a stat, I'm like, oh, duh, that makes so much sense. Of course, you can't overhaul your life Of course, you can't just create this sporadic behavior and change your entire life overnight. And I love the science that backs it. And of course, you can change your life with small, little, consistent changes. Anyway, I had a lot of fun with this episode, and I can't wait to talk to you guys next week when we continue on with our series. Make sure to download the worksheet and make sure that you're following along here and on TikTok and Instagram. I love you guys. Oh, and watch the actual video version of this. I fear that I just talk with my hands. Anyway, love you guys and see you next week. Bye.